all of the Zarians are just drones. Any sense of self that they would have had has been kind of like beaten out. However, when Faye kidnaps the Emperor, they have like a few moments that kind of reawaken his sentience. So as the Empire of Zar is falling, he actually kind of snaps out of it, and instead of just standing there slack-jawed, he actually like has the wherewithal to like hop on a ship and take off to be seen in later arcs.
Welcome to the Starship Writers Room,
a podcast that gives you an up-close look at the creation of the Starship universe.
We talk new characters, hash out plot points, and imagine possibilities that are truly out of this world.
And which you might see featured in the Deploy Starship NFT game,
a play-to-earn cryptocurrency game set in outer space.
I'm Melanie, the Starship Lore Champion, and I'm joined by my co-hosts and fellow Starship Lore creators,
ShootyPewPew, your world builder,
and
Spazzitron of CryptoPhoenix.org. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be having our third discussion about NFTs and the synergy and NFT creation. We're going to be going over heroes, villains, creatures, and you can send any ideas that you have about NFTs or anything else to lore@deploystarship.com. We're going to be starting off with Mel today, telling us about what inspired her this week. Now, what you got for us, Mel? What inspired you this week?
I have been finding myself in the story, just working off those scenes that you've written and bringing them together and fleshing them out. I have had so much fun with this. I always dream of being a writer. That's, my biggest dream. There's a reason that's my dream. And when I was writing, I was just like, wow, like I'm really good at this. And I was getting really excited. And I always have the tendency to kind of work in quiet and then kind of do a big reveal. So I was tempted to do that with you guys, but then I was just like, well, because there's so much other stuff that's going into this project, it's going to take me longer to actually finish. That's why I kind of asked you guys like, hey, do you want a progress document, or do you want me to do a big reveal? Because I'm also like super excited to share it with you. So It's been really, really inspiring for me. And also getting to, I cannot stress it enough. I know we talk about this probably every episode, but just getting to create with you guys and, Spazzitron, your skill with imagining like strong plot points and just like the scenes that you've put together, that's inspiring in itself to be able to work off of something like that. So I think there's something really special that we're getting to do here, creating together.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. I totally understand.
Part of what I like about Tron, about some of your detail writing, you'll write stuff like Albright's knuckles turned white gripping the handrail or something. These little you can see very clearly the emotions behind what's going on. And it's not like, and not like, I'm sorry, I don't mean this to say I have like some sort of third grade low bar expectations. But it's you're not writing like Albright's eyebrows wrinkled and he looked angry. It's like, no, his knuckles turned white. Like, you've got this second level of emotional details or little like moments in between saying what happens or dialogue. And it's nice to read. It creates such a good flow and it makes it very easy for the imagination to spring up. So
I appreciate that. Awesome. Thank you guys.
Showing, not telling.
Yeah, right. Always. So do we want to first launch into heroes and villains, or if I could introduce my tiny little marshmallow creature just for 2 minutes, I would love the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, go for it. Open up with that, and then I'm excited for heroes and villains. But yes.
So last night, I'm asking my brother, I'm like, we have this expansive space thing, are there any creatures or weapons or spaceships that like spring to mind? And my brother tells me about this. He starts going off because my brother is a little more long-winded than I am, which is saying something. And he starts going off about this idea for a drilling machine, a mining rig for asteroids. And it has an acronym that spells out marshmallow. And so all the people, they call it the marshmallow, but it's firing explosives and depth charges. And I thought like, oh, that's a really fun idea. But in my brain, usually I don't like to take somebody else's idea completely and just slap it in there. So I thought about like the first thing when he said marshmallows, I thought about the magma planet. What if there were these little floating colonies of like almost like paper lanterns, but little spheres like moon jellyfish, just kind of floating around in the currents in the heat. So I put existing in the wild in scattered or vast colonies of hundreds or sometimes thousands. These small living things have a super short lifespan, like a tsetse fly, and look like a white paper bubble. They range in size anywhere from a golf ball to a grapefruit, maybe something that behaves like a moon jellyfish, but a white sphere with a tissue-like membrane or skin. They have a small face, or maybe face-like markings that look like two wide eyes and an open mouth. Usually found floating absently in their villages, they are very easily released and scattered into random clusters, like blowing a white dandelion, or running through the dust in sunlight, due to any sudden changes in hot air currents. When they get too close to even mildly hotter flames or lava pools, they pop, releasing a tiny whine of escaping air that sounds like a tiny, pathetic scream or sigh. So just like a random creature that you might encounter on the, if Faye is walking around the magma planet or whatever, suddenly the wind picks up and this giant, like, just a whole bunch of little, just kind of a
I
funny
like that.
story.
For like a false direct little atmospheric thing. That's super cool.
Yeah, like we're not in danger. It's just this weird detail on the magma planet. Like I've said before, I really enjoy world building. So when you watch a good Jim Henson creation, there's so much going on, and the little creatures are just as fun and just as memorable for his work in many ways. So I enjoy like kind of trying to capture that a little bit. The little nonsense creatures, I suppose, is what I mean.
It is true though, like every single thing, like when the Skeksis are like having their little dinner, like every single thing on that table looks like it has a story. Like it's
right. It's wonderful. Like even the tarnished, like the brass is a little tarnished, and maybe one of the forks is bent. Yeah,
like
good man.
Even like the little creatures that they're eating or whatever, like they all like everything has depth.
Yeah, the way they move, like the way they rolled and ran across the dining room table. Yeah. So speaking of Skeksis, do you want to start with heroes or villains today?
Let's start with villains because that's going to be shorter.
Villains.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So like, okay, so the Empress, obviously, like the big reveal at the end is that she actually has like a mobile form, like how she's able to actually stand up and just be like this, like colossal, like 600-foot tall like thing. But then there's also her in like her seated position. So I think it'd be fun to have like a coalition document, like the like two different NFTs of her, and the seated one could be the coalition and saying like, oh, it's just like a statue that they kind of worship or whatever, because they don't really quite understand what it is, and so they just figure, oh, it's like a statue, it's part of their architecture, like this thing that they built and worship or whatever. But then the mobile phase could actually be written by like Albright, like like as like a personal document, like a personal log sort of thing, and it could be obviously like a lot less cold, like a lot more like talking about the firepower it can boast, things like that.
So the Empress, we're imagining a giant colossus-sized statue, or at least something that looks like that.
Yeah, like the Sphinx sort of a thing, where it's like like that sort of thing, where it's so not moving, but like as you go into the story, like you get, oh, she's sort of like the hive mind sort of thing for all the little Zarians. Mm-hmm.
Do you realize that she's alive, or like that?
Well, Faye realizes it, and Pan realizes it. Like everybody that's not coalition knows it because they've existed for a while, but the coalition is sort of like arrogant, and they're like, oh, it doesn't move. It's not,
Yeah.
Right. You see, I like that. You see what you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like trying to log everything as quickly as possible. So like, yeah. And then, because at the Battle of Zar, when she stands up, and like I put in the little document, when Albright and Pan and Faye and Roy from far away are fighting it, it's sort of like in Godzilla when like you got the little fighter jets and the little helicopters like zooming around Godzilla, that sort of look. Like that's sort of how I picture them fighting the Empress.
Yeah. very recently, the more recent Suicide Squad movie where they're fighting the giant starfish, right?
I missed that one. I didn't get to see that one.
It was, it's not that I could create a blockbuster movie. There's a lot to enjoy in it.
Oh, good, yeah. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, the plot development it's like, dude, it's a superhero movie. What do you want?
I know. I would watch it. I would watch it again. Is all I'll say for sure.
Yeah. Cool. So there's that. I don't know.
What is the relationship between the Emperor and the Empress of Tsar? For me as much as our listener.
So all of the Zarians are just drones, right? Like they don't have any self, like any sense of self that they would have had has been kind of like beaten out. However, when Faye kidnaps the Emperor, they have like a few moments that kind of reawaken his sentience. So as the Empire of Tsar is falling, he actually kind of snaps out of it, and instead of just standing there slack-jawed, he actually like has the wherewithal to like hop on a ship and take off to be seen in later arcs.
And is this happening like while the battle with the Empress is going on?
Yeah, like he kind of snaps out of it. Like I mean, and you could even do something visually interesting, like maybe like his eyes are like purple and they kind of fade to like a more normal color, and he kind of like he looks to his comrades and they're all just sort of like they either collapse or they just kind of stand there, and he's like, oh my god, I'm the only one that's like having thoughts right now. So he in the midst of the confusion of the battle, he's able to take off.
Yeah, I love that. Are we putting the Zarians on the metallic planet, or do you have a vision for that quite yet?
I think it would be cool that they think it's a metallic planet. However, it used to be a paradise planet that has been kind of stripped mined of everything.
Okay, yeah, because when we talk about the metallic planet, we have this sentient AI that is all over it. And this is different from the Zarians, correct?
Yeah, and plus, because it's going to be a proper name planet, like we can it doesn't need to necessarily fall in one of the 10. Like, we thought it was going to be a paradise planet, or it used to be a paradise planet, and now it's like just a husk, basically, like a kind of like a cold. I like the idea that like the landscape is all like granite, and so like it just like granite mountains and just like where everything's just been mined, and it's just sort of like just a little like I don't know, spooky in the illustrative sense. What
is there left to do? Right, nowhere left to conquer. I find that when I see movies or movies, especially these days, and you see a giant city like Dredd, Judge Dredd, that whole the recent remake, when they talk about the city blocks, how it's sprawling and vast, and it's nothing but city for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. There's something so devastating about that. There's nowhere left to conquer, that's it.
Well, Faye, the reason that Faye gets kidnapped in the first place is because she initially kidnaps because she doesn't quite understand how the Zarians are, so she kidnaps the Emperor, right? And maybe like he's on a grassland planet trying to like look for resources or something. I think when I shared that, it was a long time ago. I think it was like it was a few months ago, I think, Mel, right?
I think so. I was just thinking because I kept picturing them as bees, maybe culturally. So in terms of their habitat, maybe grasslands, depleted grasslands. I just looked and it says bees.
Bees!
Not the bees.
They are like their original habitats are tropical climates and heavily forested areas. So was thinking like which planet would maybe even swamp would be interesting potentially.
Well, paradise almost makes sense with that, a former paradise, like their natural climate was this, but then they have become this, like they turned the paradise into something cold. That could be a little extra.
Yeah, I also kind of pictured them. I think I remember I drew the little sketch on the back of an envelope of sort of like a reptile pig-like sort of things. We don't have anything that, like, as far as our characters, our heroes and villains, we don't have anything that's like super physically intimidating. So I wanted this idea of like this thing that's like, 7 foot, built like a cinder block, just like that sort of archetype. I pictured their starships as just being cube-like, like completely not aerodynamic, just to kind of have like a bit of variety with the starships as well.
I find I really love that about this, that when I'm thinking about races, we have the opportunity to think like, are they a race that stays planet bound, or are they a race that has ascended into space exploration? And then, of course, like with the Bat people, what would their spaceship look like? It's so fun writing this.
Yeah, there's a lot, like with sky's the limit, so we can kind of like do a lot of stuff that we can kind of tread on a lot of ground that hasn't really been covered yet. So that's, yeah, definitely.
I love that.
Yeah, so there's,
and so for the Empress, you were saying 2 NFTs, one where she's more static and it's like more of an impartial or detached scientific tone of the coalition, more descriptive, but also based on their misunderstanding and not really knowing her. And then the other one where it's more dynamic. So is there any kind of possibility, like what kind of like functionality could we get out of this, where maybe we combine these, or do we always get the static NFT first? And how might that affect the kind of quest in the game? Or what are you thinking of in terms of those kinds of questions?
I'm thinking that the static one does something as far as resources go, like because she has the hive mind, so it's like you could have like, hive efficiency, resources are doubled or whatever. And then the movement one, because she's doing that not sort of defense, I guess. It could be like super intense defensive capabilities. So like when she's standing, it's like, it acts as like a deterrent against attack.
+10 shield.
Yeah, +10 shield. Yeah, or cannot be like, you can't attack unless you have like at least 5 or 6 creatures or fleets or something.
Or an orbital defense cannon.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. There we go.
What about like a surprise factor? Like it gives you the element of surprise.
I like that. Like how like they had like the 2-sided thing where something, if it's triggered, it flips and it goes from stationary to mobile.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Shooty?
It could be, well, 2 things. One is what Spazzitron was saying right there, that it could be something like maybe less of a before and after and more of a like a transformer. When it's a jet, it's fast. When it's a transformer, it has attack. So like when the Empress is in this stage, provides blanket resources, whatever, and if you tap it or turn it into this, like you get the option of making it a walking Empress. So like for the whole battle, it'll be this, or it takes a bunch of resources to tap it and turn it from one to the other, depending on the ability. And then another thought was like, depending on how this plays out, how much of a card game we're making, or whatever, it could be like when the Empress is tapped, then something changes in the Emperor. He gains a little more sentience, or he gains a weapon ability, or something that the other Zarians don't have. That it somehow affects your Emperor NFT if you have one of those.
I like that. Tapped? Do you mean dead or activated?
Oh, tapped. Yeah, activated. It's an old Magic the Gathering term. You turn the card sideways on the table, and it means you're using it.
I like that a lot. I like thinking about how these could work together.
When I played Magic with my brothers, I was always a blue deck, and that was full of like this mermaid culture, Atlanteans. I can't, for the life of me right now, can't remember the name, but essentially you'd play this deck of like, you'd grab a deck of like 100 and just fill it with crustaceans and mermaid people, and then you just hope or pack the deck a little bit that you draw the Emperor, because when you draw the Emperor, all of your mermaids get +1, all of your, and so it's a card that really makes the whole army come together. And again, like I said, depending on how this is all playing out, whether we're exploring for NFTs or building decks, or
I can definitely see, like, if we do the card game route, like maining Czar, to do like a Czar themed deck would be really cool.
Hell yeah. What about heroes a little bit? I know Matt would be excited for us to talk a little bit about Roy, but if there are any more developed things that you wanted to talk about specifically, Tron, I would love to hear it.
Oh,
unless we want to keep talking villains. But,
I think as far as villains go, the only other one I can think is the Rajed villain. And so, because by the time the story is taking place, at least in this arc, like Rajed is more of like a legend. Like people talk about, like if something goes missing, it's like, oh, it's Rajed. It's more of like folklore. But that allows like as far as a villain, it could even just as, and that could be like stealing resources. That could be like stuff like that. And that, as far as villains, that's like, we don't have a whole lot.
Spazzitron! We got Metal Medusa.
Metal Medusa.
Don't you forget my goddess.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, you take the reins. You take the reins.
No, I just, well, first of all, I really like so as you guys were talking, something clicked into place that probably should have already have clicked. The kind of purpose of the villain NFTs would be, I imagine, I'm sure you could get positives out of them, but when you're saying about Rajed, that like depletes the resources, or you pull this card and it's like, oh gosh, he's taken some of my kyanite or something else. So when we're looking at it in that light, firstly, like the first question is, how does that change like any negative impacts from an Empress NFT card? But the second question is, the Emperor kind of has an arc where he's potentially kind of like a villain, but then he gets redeemed. So is there a possibility of his NFT reflecting that, or we just have multiple where it represents where he is in the story?
So for the for Emperor Czar, I think having it be like one NFT is like, you could even do like 3, right? So you could have Emperor Czar, and that's just like again, like stealing resources, like he's trying to do when he gets captured. And then I was thinking he's like a sort of low IQ, like he just opts to go by just Czar, which is a fairly cool name. So the second NFT could be Czar Unshackled, and that could be something where like maybe because of his ship and because he's like trying to like find somewhere to hide, and because the ships are so different, like maybe that allows passage into dust planets to happen without consequence, because he just has like a big bulky tough ship. And then and then lastly, at some point he's going to have to do something with the heroes, like they need his help or something. And then that could be like Czar redeemed, and that could be like, because his ship is so durable, it could be like extra shield power to ships, or extra something like that. Or he like draws fire, so like he aggroes first. Like if you go in with the fleet, like all of their fire focuses just on his ship first, allowing the other ships to pass through, something like that. I kind of pictured his as being like a triple situation.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's another I keep referencing Magic because it's the one big card game that I know well. But there's an ability within that, essentially a tank ability. It's like you absorb hits first, and that's in Splinterlands too, another NFT game on the blockchain. Part of how I vision like our interaction with NFTs, like alternately, besides sort of building a deck and having sort of a card game, another way of using them could be like because right now, in the game, you go to a planet, you mine the planet, you come back. You either buy the planet if you want, or you don't. You mine it, you come back. That's it. And so right now, our NFT game, our abilities are kind of revolving around that, more or less kyanite, or obstructions to mining. And so like it could be that when you go to mine a planet, the random number generator pops up a number, and that correlates with what NFT card you get, whether it's innocuous encounter with the marshmallows, or whether it's something like you encounter magma ants, like your crew member is out of commission, one of your crew members is out of commission for this mining thing, or again, minus 10% to your mining because of magma ants. But if you have this ice beam that's good against magma ants, then if that random number generator pops up a hostile magma creature, then you also have the ice pistol or something, then it'll be like, nope, and as simple as that. Like it just defends against negative outcomes, and so that's kind of one interactive thought. I know we haven't talked too much about that, but and then another thought is we have a blending mechanism currently in place for the game, blending components up into rarities. So it's a little different, but it might be like a story beat where a whole bunch of the first iteration of Tsar are released, based on where you are, but you have to have like this Emperor Tsar iteration plus another card, and you combine them and burn them, and then you get Tsar Redeemed. And so Tsar Redeemed will be inherently more useful and more desirable, so that people don't just go around burning the second generation like crazy.
Yeah.
And the complication with that, of course, is that you can always buy your way through the story. If we have an auction house and somebody just wants to buy Tsar Redeemed, they can just skip the whole storyline, and $200, boom, there's your Tsar Redeemed, and you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, but I'm sure and I'm sure that will happen, but everyone plays games different. I'm not super concerned about that, because it's sort of like
yeah, I'm not either. I just kind of,
yeah, it's like, do you want to crack packs or do you want to just buy singles? It's and plus that would be cool, right? Because like some people might not be that invested in the story, but they like the game. Some people might be 50-50. Some people might have limited interest in playing it, but they want to like get the story beats. So yeah, I get what you're saying though. Like you have to do stuff to protect the value. I totally get that.
Yeah, it wasn't more of an economy thing. It's more of a like letting somebody be able to race their way through the game, or what kind of way do we want to obstruct that so that we protect them from themselves?
Oh, I get what you're saying. So like they could like get the stuff they want and then have no idea what's going on because they've just kind of is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like they're like, this game's stupid. What is this? Our resurrection? And it's like, well, you should play the game,
Yeah, I got you. Hopefully with like the flavor text, like it could be enough to at least get them interested in trying to find the missing info. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's just me talking, just kind of spitballing here. I'm not trying to make a point about what we should do about it or anything.
I gotcha. I hadn't thought of that at all, but yeah. Okay, I got you.
Melanie, I know we kind of interrupted talking about Metal Medusa a little bit. Would you like to crack that one?
I'm just looking at her notes and straight to the kind of weapons section. Mind reading, hair causes physical wounds. She can instantly download your language, allowing for only the illusion of privacy. For example, you think you're using the Kyanite communication device to speak with her, and then you deactivate it to have a private conversation with your comrades, but she can still understand what you're saying. The other thing is like she hijacks the conscious core. So I feel like for the NFTs on the Metal Planet, there's definitely that blending with her and the conscious core, or her foil, which is like the same type of creature, but with different intentions. And the planet itself is all very mind ready. So it could be something where you just need some kind of information protection. But how would you guys see those kinds of attributes being represented in an NFT, especially in terms of functionality?
In a card game, it would be super easy. You could just have the other person have to play with their hand exposed.
I love that.
Like
yeah, mind reading.
That would, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that could be a way to do it. It's a super easy mechanic, and it ties in proper with the lore. So that's like my easy solution.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be like any first strike abilities are disabled. Any kind of preemptive things that you have in place to defend yourself, like, nope.
Mm.
Yeah, I like that.
Or another thought is, it's a little bit of a sidetrack, but when you're talking about Metal Medusa, the conscious core, which is the core of the metallic planet itself, like the conscious living, center of the planet that Metal Medusa gets to hijack and control, which is awesome. With machines, we have red and green, we have on and off. So like, what if there's some function with NFT machines that is a very, similar to the Zarians thing, but a little bit more machine-like, where we have with the metallic race, it's all about on or off. Like, is this NFT in the green position or the red position? Like, and that kind of being a central theme, because that's with machines, right? You turn it off, you turn it on. I thought that might be a fun detail for an interaction somehow.
I'm just getting the image of like calling IT and then them being like, have you tried turning it off and back on again?
Right, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I guess one of my suggestions, like eliminating first strike ability, I really like, if we're playing person against person, being able to see the other person's hand. But if it's like, if our integration with these NFT cards is us against the computer all the time, there's been video games I played where I can't remember any of it, but where you're playing against the computer itself. It was a board game called the Omega Virus, and you're all trying to get to the center of the board and stop the virus, and it keeps changing the game for you.
The flavor text on that, like, say that's a card that it's like, whatever, Medusa's something disable, whatever. The flavor text on that could just be Matt gets frustrated and like punches the dashboard, and Michael looks at him and says, have you tried turning it off and turning it on again? That would actually be funny, and it would work.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a Michael thing too.
Who is the chemist?
He is like the last known survivor of a race that was wiped out by the Zarians. And so he's a completely he's like the last. I just put in Nuvian as a filler because I was thinking he's Newt-like, but that I'm not like emotionally tied to that name or anything.
Well, that reminds me, you were mentioning previously about his foil with the if you want to talk about that, if the foil would be considered a villain, which he might not be. It was the chemist in one of our recent meetings. You were talking about basically how you were thinking about the foil for the chemist.
Oh, yeah. Lord Ane, I think. The sort of person that kidnapped the wretch. Well, see, that's tough though, because he's a coalition person, but he is a villain. I guess hero and villain is sort of ambiguous, but yeah. So his thing could obviously be like maybe like a double thing, like where if you have him and the wretch, you just have unlimited shield or something, or like you can use something like that, or like
minus 5 wretch's health, unlimited shield. Yeah,
like the wretch has like limited uses, obviously, so it's not super too OP, but but it could be a little more OP because you have to have 2 NFTs to activate it, something like that.
Yeah. For anybody that didn't catch the last podcast where we talked about the wretch, the idea of the wretch is that it's this orphan that is infused with Kyanite that is captured by the coalition, and they basically have her tied up to electrodes because when she's in intense pain, then she overcharges the ship for whatever use they need out of that. And so it's a terrible thing. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we have a few, like we could talk about something like the gas planet spider monstrosity, but I don't see that as a villain necessarily. I see that as a tool of the villain.
I think of it as more of a force of nature, it's like the
Yeah.
weather or something. Yeah, it's
That's
like it's
how I
not.
thought of it.
Yeah, it's just
But
something.
really,
yeah.
the person or the collective sending the sacrifices to it, I feel like they have potential to be the villains of that planet, even if they, whatever they think they're acting for the greatest good. I think that there's some potential for them to, especially like to abuse that responsibility and, make the rules so that they're suitable for them and things like that.
Yeah, well, what was that race? It was we wanted like squirrels or rabbits or something like to be the race of the people that are sacrificing.
Something that is inherently timid when we look at it, so that we see their nature immediately, but it, like ironically, like they don't know that they haven't revealed yet how timid they really are under the surface.
Yeah, and if we make them look a little bit cute, like because what they're doing is like it's sort of sympathetic, like it's like we get that they don't know, they're not just like an abominable like people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk a little bit about Pan, because as a sort of an armorer figure, he's got people come to him for weapons and armor, like trinkets and devices.
Yeah, he's the merchant.
But he's more than a merchant. He plays story beat roles, right? Like he's involved in the battle with the Empress of Tsar, right?
Yeah, but like so like gamified, he's just a merchant, but yeah, he's like a big character. I had a cool idea because like there's gonna be situations where he is flying with Faye, but he's also a robot. So and Faye's ship is super tiny, so I thought it'd be fun if like he literally like flew, like he just had like handles on the outside of the ship.
R2D2.
Yeah. Yes, that sort of, yeah, where he's just like kind of, but he's more like human shape, I guess. So like this idea that like, and maybe he can replace one of his arms with a gun. So he's like if they get in like a space battle, like it's sort of like how in World War I, like the gunner was just a dude in the backseat with a gun of the plane. So Pan, even though he's like an android, he's like a very warm, kind of nurturing character. He helps in the battle at Tsar. He rescues Faye. He doesn't rescue the wretch. He takes care of the wretch for X amount of time.
This reminds me of Bishop from Aliens.
Oh yeah. Yes, but now as far as NFTs, you could have maybe like he has a power that can like repair your ships, or like it could be like Pan's med bay where he like heals your health or something. And
I like that.
And again, if you maybe if you get him and the wretch, there could be something, or like maybe for blending, it could be like the wretch, but like after, where she has like a little mech suit sort of situation.
When we're talking about NFT creation and augmentation and changing NFTs, like based on storyline beats or uses of the character itself, I like how we almost have a dichotomy or an ability to branch out. Like we have robotic enhancements, like nano enhancements based on these characters, but then we also have like raw natural enhancements, like like a blacksmith hammer from the magma planet, or something really like organic from the ocean planet that's not robotic at all, but it's much more like psychic kyanite energy or something. And like I like what heroes and villains are more on the robotic side, what heroes and villains are more like natural to their planet, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's cool because like a lot of these NFT ideas that we're kind of coming up with on the fly, which helps because there's three of us, so we can like bounce stuff around.
Yeah. I like Pan, like maybe giving an extra life, because both times in the story, we've seen him when he rescues Faye, she's about to die, and then he like saves her. And then he does the same thing with the wretch when she can't survive without the life support that he makes for her. So I feel like he a good functionality for him would be like an extra life.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Or especially something with Faye, like specifically.
Yeah. Well, because he could, that was sort of what I was thinking as well. Like, because he can also be like a gun module for Faye's ship. There could be an integrate, like all these could integrate together in like unique ways. Like, yeah, if he's with Faye, then her ship gets like enhanced firepower, or yeah, something like that.
You know, if we're going kind of the like creating a card route, we also have the ability to either roll a dice or just pick one. You know, if you're using this card, it has 4 different abilities possible. It could be a very powerful card. And I imagine that like the actual heroes and villains are going to be very powerful NFTs that like you could use one of these 4 abilities. And while we're using that one, you only get to use that one, you know, or it could be a random number generator thing. Like when you get into a battle and you go to use that card, then you click and it gives you one of those numbers, and that's the ability you randomly get for that battle.
I like the idea of it being like you said, where you pick one, like, you know, it can either come into play as this or this or this. But yeah, the adding like a random chance element to some NFTs would be cool as well.
Yeah, like cool for some, but really annoying for others.
We did want to talk about the Discord event a little bit just before we jet off.
Yeah, part of the, you know, what I was talking about with Grandpa is we don't want to interrupt. Like when I approached him with this, we don't want to interrupt the current planetary sale. For anybody that's listening, trying to place the timeline of when we're actually recording this, the planets are about like 3.47, I think, percent or whatever cost. But we didn't want to interrupt that. But then once like space stations are starting to roll out regularly, and like we don't want to interrupt any other current promotions. Because right now in the Discord, we're so early that that's part of the delay. So we'd have to just kind of take a look at the big calendar and ask Grandpa as well. You know, what are the interruptions? Do we want to release it a week earlier, a week later? And for that, like as a prompt, I was thinking. I know this is kind of a separate question. How do we want to introduce this? But certain details, certainly like a paragraph or 2 paragraphs that sets things up, but certain details, like if the Discord event is what I'm thinking, where we all design things you would find on Grandpa's ship, or, you know, just story beat moments for Grandpa's ship, like a little pet he has, or an instrument, or a tool, or maybe design a room or a level of his ship. If we're doing that, then certain details like his flight control chair is a rocking chair. We're going to have to introduce those details that we want kind of set in stone, you know?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Just giving like, this is where we're starting and where do we want to go?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really anxious about this. Like I want to release the event next week.
Yeah.
So
well, why don't we say
where Shooty stands? I'm on the side of let's just do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do something like that, like we can do 2 events or more.
Yeah, we could do that, because I'm thinking about other ships that we don't have that much, like, because like Phase we can't really do that with because it's sort of integral. But yeah, maybe Emperor Czar's ship, or just like the Zarian fleet. Like we don't really have anything that much on it.
Yeah, and we could even do fleshing out planets. We've done a lot of that, but we could, again, just present what we have, you know. So there are different topics that we could definitely do. So the Czar ship, maybe even the crystal planet.
Yeah. Even just like if we just have like a creature workshop, like, and we come up with like, you know, 10 random things that could even be like reworked and changed for the planet. Like that would be super beneficial, because that's sort of, other than that speed round that we did a couple weeks ago, Mel, we could always use more creatures.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The other element is also like part of these community events is not to accomplish something, like to win a prize or whatever. It's really just spinning the wheel in a good way, like getting people a little bit engaged and riled up and excited, a little bit emotional about the story of the game, you know. And so when we're saying like, open it up, let's create a whole bunch of beasts or monsters for the crystal planet, it's not necessarily with the intention that any of it gets used. It's sort of like a springboard event as well. You know, maybe ideally, you know, some of it gets used, but we don't have to get too rigid about what this event is for. Like, we need an idea, so let's release this event. It's more like, let's release an event. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, I think it's about getting in community, and yeah, that sounds good.
Just to chat more like directly with some of the people that have been like, following us and stuff like that would be fun, even just by yourself.
I mean, I think it would be fun. We could do a Zoom event. We are like such ballers with our premium Zoom account that we can have up to 100 people and not be cut off.
It could be.
I think that would be really fun to do.
We release the details of the event in Discord, and then we have a Zoom event to reveal like some of the fun ideas that we just to say like, hey, these are 5 ideas that we really loved, if Dritz and Wilbur is one of those 5 ideas, for example, if he or she, wants to speak personally on it, like here's 5 minutes and go. That would be a really fun Zoom event. Yeah,
that would be super fun. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Great to get all 3 of us together. I love it.
Me too. Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much to you listeners for being the fly on the wall while we think about all these things. And we would love, as ever, to hear your ideas. So yes, please do drop them in the lore@deploystarship.com email address. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Starship Writers Room.
If you have an idea for the Starship lore, we would love to hear it, and you might even get a shout out on the pod.
Simply send to lore@deploystarship.com. That's LORE@deploystarship.com.
We hope you have a stellar day.
And we'll see you next week.